Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. Happy St. Andrew's Day to all the Scots who are on the stream tonight. So let's see who's on. We have Mo Green, great to see you. We have Robert, great to have you on. Audrey, great to have you on. Hope you're well tonight. Great to see you. Political X, great to see you too. Hope you're well. Martha, great to have you on too. Great to see you. We have a Raven 1983 Witch, great to see you too. Freddie, hope you're well from Belgium. Killer, great to have you on moderating once again. Great to see you. We also have John Bob, great to see you. SNP motion failed predictably. Beggars believe that MPs can vote on a motion they weren't present for. Yeah, it wasn't it interesting how very few actually turned up from the Tory side. We also have Chatty Rat, great to see you, Chatty. Hope you're fine tonight. We have Katrina, great to see you, Katrina. Hope you're well. Good evening, everyone. Good evening to you too, Katrina. Lena, great to see you. Hope you're fine. Draconic, great to see you. We also have Daryl, the snowman. Bit early for snow. Depends on where you are, I guess. We also have Magister, great to see you, Magister. CGM, great to have you on. And we're up to 203 viewers, so I'll have to go right down to the bottom. Thanks to everyone for coming on. Inconsequential, I see there. We also have Tiny Demolition Lover. Hope you're well tonight. Who else have we got? Roisin, great to see you. CGM, I think I said hello already. David McGuinness, great to see you. Indie Truck David, sorry. We also have Night Raven, great to see you, Night Raven. And I go way down the bottom. And we have a super chat from Valerio. Thanks so much, Valerio. Hope you're fine tonight. How will Boris manage the latest variant? He'll manage the latest variant by doing pretty much what he did before, which is pretty much nothing. It's a case of really we see. Well, we'll cover it over in the live stream tonight, but this thing has to be taken seriously, and Boris Johnson is not capable of taking anything seriously. So I'm afraid that he's just going to, once again, he's meant to be following the rules that his government have put in place, wearing masks inside and on trains and public transport. And of course, I think he's already broken some of those rules today. He's not someone who's setting a good example. And we've seen how, look, I think it's also important to remember that most people are following the rules and the guidance. It's a small minority that are not. But it's a case of, let's just want to do something here. It's a case of, a small number of people breaking the rules can cause massive consequences for others. And Boris Johnson setting a bad example. And we've seen examples of people on public transport saying, well, Boris Johnson not wearing a mask, so I'm not going to wear a mask. Not exactly a good excuse. Boris Johnson decided to jump into the flames. Would they do it as well? Hopefully not. Great to see so many on the stream tonight. Hope you're all very well. So let's start off with this first story. Once again, the crossings are creating conflict. So the numbers of people crossing from France over to Britain, people who want to get to Britain at the end of the day. And this is a small percentage of the total number of refugees in Europe. So it says here, tensions run high in Hastings over small boat arrivals. So I just want to talk about this story first, and then we'll get into Brexit, of course. This is can't get away from Brexit. There's no escaping Brexit. So it says here, 10 days ago, people stood on the beach in Hastings and tried to prevent a lifeboat crew from going into the sea to rescue a group of refugees in a flimsy dinghy. According to a witness, they were shouting at the Royal National Lifeguard Institution, "Don't bring any more of those. We're full up. That's why we've stopped our donations." So meanwhile, a group from the same town called calling itself Hastings Supports Refugees, has set up what is thought to be the first emergency response team run by volunteers to welcome the bedraggled, traumatized newcomers and provide them with hot food and drinks, dry clothes, and a warm welcome as soon as they come ashore. The two approaches underline tensions at the heart of one East Sussex coastal town affected by the rise in a small boat arrivals, which culminated in 27 people drowning as they attempted to cross the channel last Wednesday, The Guardian visited this week. So Hastings' population around 100,000 is on the front line of the small boat arrivals. Refugees have been landing on the beach since 2019, and in line with overall tripling of numbers this year, there has been a huge increase, particularly in the last month. Dinghies not picked up by Border Force vessels when they are heading for Dover often drift towards Hastings or other towns on the south coast as Dungarees, depending on the weather and tides. The angry backlash happened on Saturday the 20th of November and emerged after a woman called Zoe called James O'Brien's LBC show last week, which I remember hearing this lady called in, and she was reporting from the beach. Zoe said, so you can see here, Calais, Dover, and Hastings is down here. Zoe said she was on the beach with her boyfriend when the lifeboat crew pulled the boat out and were going to go into the water before a group stood directly in front of the boat so that the boat couldn't be put into the water. The RNLI spokesperson confirmed to The Guardian that the incident had been reported to the police, that the lifeboat had been able to launch, and that the Hastings lifeboat station remained in service. It isn't the first time that the RNLI has faced criticism. In July, Nigel Farage accused it of facilitating illegal migration, a claim strongly rebutted by the RNLI. Donations to the charities subsequently surged. And I covered that at the time, Nigel Farage trying to engage in, Nigel Farage's Barbara Streisand effect, which done well for the RNLI. Previously, far-right supporters have turned up on the beach to hear from figures such as Nigel Marcham, known as Little Veteran, whipping up hostility towards people arriving in small boats. You have these... Many people are arriving, and it makes sense that refugees are distributed around the country, that they don't just stay in one small town or one area, because it creates hostility. It's important that people are redistributed around, and this is the same in Europe, that countries in Europe take their share of refugees, because what happens is if they don't, then it creates hostility towards refugees in the areas on the front line. It's not an excuse for this, but this is what happens. And you have poor people who are complaining about, why isn't the government looking after us? Why are they looking after these people coming across the sea? And of course, you have people like Nigel Farage and the Daily Mail who exploit this and feed it. These moments have left some residents horrified. Many have responded generously to appeals from Hastings Support Refugees to buy £5 Primark joggers, tops and underwear for people to change into on arrival as they get out of clothes sodden in seawater. Restaurants and cafes have cooked trays of piping hot chips along with hot drinks and rushed them to the beach. The beach response team has a box of emergency supplies at the ready, and as soon as the phone pings to say that there's a new arrival coming ashore, volunteers hurry down to the beach. So this is generally a good response from the public, but of course you have the Nigel Farages and you have the racists, other racists. He's a racist himself, but other racists who try to take advantage of the situation and try to turn poor people against other poor people. I'm not saying that the arrival of the refugees in some small towns doesn't have an impact. Yes, it doesn't. That's why it's important that people are, if people are claiming asylum and they're being processed and they have to have accommodation, they should be distributed around the country, and while their claim is processed. Their refugees end off. Yes. My brother was drowned in the cyclone, in the Clyde killers. So this really angers me. Sorry to hear that. I honestly think that the government love to create poverty, and that they think this is just part of life to have part of the population poor. Yes, I agree 100% with that political X. I think there's a real feeling when it comes to people like Jacob Rees-Mogg and Ian Duncan Smith, that they are superior, and they need to feel superior. So it's necessary to keep people poor, to keep people miserable, because then it makes them feel good about themselves, in a sort of twisted sense of, I'm far from these people. It will never happen to me, this sort of attitude. And, in order to feel superior, they need to be higher or above someone. That's what needs to happen. Nigel Farage and the Racists, my favourite band. Long time ago, Maxi was fine. I'm so sorry to hear that, Audrey. A trumpeter, no doubt. If the boatloads of dogs, people would be swimming out to save them. History is repeating. Yes, sad. Okay, I want to move on to, there are good people doing wonderful things, and they outnumber the racists and the bigots. But unfortunately, the racists and the bigots normally have the bigger megaphone, and the media like to listen to them over those who are doing good. The media love bad news. It sells. Good news doesn't, unfortunately. Sticking with, bad news or good news, I don't know who. It depends on who's viewing it. Bad news is in the eye of the beholder, it seems. Goods shipping directly from Ireland to EU up by 50% in 6 months, of course, as a consequence of Brexit. Volume of goods shipped directly from Ireland to the EU on the new Brexit busting ferry route has rocketed by 50% in the past 6 months, as exporters seek to avoid travelling across land through Great Britain, according to official data. Figures published by the Irish Maritime Development Office show significant traffic diverted away from the traditional routes between Dublin and Britain to some of 32 new ferry services direct to the ports of Le Havre, Cherbourg and Dunkirk in France, and Zobrig, if I'm pronouncing it correct, in Belgium. I always mess up with the pronunciation of this particular word, this particular place. I know there's someone in Belgium who's shouting at their screen now. The IMDO report shows freight volumes from Dublin Port to Liverpool and Holyhead in Ashley were down 19% in the first 3 quarters of 2021 compared with 2020, and down by 30% on the 2 routes from Rosslare in the southeast of Ireland to the Welsh ports of Pembroke and Fishguard. It is clear that the new trading arrangements between Ireland and the UK have had a significant and negative impact upon roll-on, roll-off. So this is the type of haulage, freight traffic between the 2 countries, the IMDO report said. Underpinning all of these trends are the new customs and trading arrangements between Ireland and the UK that come into force on the 1st of January 2021, it added. 1/3 of roll-on, roll-off in the Republic of Ireland now operates on direct routes to ports in the European Union, up from 16% share in 2019. So It's gone from 16% to 30% or 33%, a third. And it's probably going to continue, yes. Zeebrugge. Thanks very much. Killer Zeebrugge. Zeebrugge. Okay. We'll be close. I don't remember what I said. Traffic for the second and third quarters of this year show Irish Republic to EU traffic is already up 52% compared to the entirety of 2019, it added. The decline in demand for ferry services to Wales and Liverpool has also seen Northern Irish ports receiving a Brexit dividend, with freight volumes hitting unprecedented highs in 2021. So what you're seeing is a divergence, in a sense, of trade, away from Great Britain to the continent when it comes to the Republic of Ireland. And you're seeing ferries operating more services between Great Britain and Northern Ireland than between Great Britain and the Republic of Ireland. DC, thanks so much for that super chat. Max, I know you're not a betting man, but what does your gut say about the old Bexley and Sidcup by-election on Thursday? Will there be big changes? The bid count. Let me have a look now. Let me see. So let's have a look at this constituency. So of course, Labour have didn't hold it since ever. Okay, so it's always been so I'm not very familiar with the constituency, so we can just have a quick look. It says here, the Conservatives hold a majority of 18,000. That was in 2019. Of course, 2019 was a particular year. It's better to look back at 2017 or 2015. 2015, 15,000. 2017, 15,000. So I would use this as a barometer. Labour, 14,000 in 2017. Okay, we can get rid of UKIP. They're no longer there. The Lib Dems, 1,500. Greens, 800. It's difficult. Will there be big changes? I don't know. I think that's a significant majority to overcome. Even if Labour and the Greens and Lib Dems work together, I don't know if they have the numbers. Once again, this is a safe seat for the Tories. You can see here they've held the seat since 1983. So I don't see it switching. It depends on who's running. It depends on who the candidates are, but it would be lovely to see it flip. The Conservatives would lose their minds. A safe seat switching to Labour. Labour is the only one who has a chance here at this. You can see here the Lib Dems 3,000, Labour 10,000. So the Labour candidate has much better chance, but I don't see it switching, unfortunately. You'd need, a massive, massive swing. The Conservatives would have to stay at home, and Labour, Lib Dems and Greens would need massive turnout, I think. It's not impossible, but I don't really see it happening. Thanks for that super chat, DC. Fingers crossed. Stranger things have happened, but unfortunately I don't see it happening. Where's this? Where is this constituency? See, so he died, and they're going to put in a Tory. There could be a sympathy vote. So there could be a chance that the Conservatives could win through a sympathy, with a sympathy candidate. But I don't know. You would need a massive turnout for Labour, and generally with by-elections you don't see massive turnouts. So this is from a general election. It's not a by-election. So by-elections normally have lower turnout. But we don't know. We'll have to keep an eye on it. I don't know when is the by-election due to take place. It doesn't say. No. But it's a safe seat for the Conservatives, so I don't see it switching. Just to say on this report, it says Reshuffle Europort has benefited most. It is now taking 49% of EU traffic, with another 49% going through Dublin and 2% via Cork. On Saturday, Reshuffle Europort said it had its busiest day in its history. Its general manager, Glenn Carr, put the increased demand down to the desire to avoid the UK, but also a reduction in trade with Great Britain because of Brexit red tape and cost. He went on to say, in particular industries, we're definitely seeing where traditionally a lot of goods were sourced in the UK or exported to the UK. There's been a switch to Europe. He told Journal.ie. We definitely see it in the port in terms of the mix of goods that are there now: ingredients, food, dairy, pharmaceuticals. This is going to continue until Great Britain rejoins the single market and the customs union. Fillmore has said that the by-elections on Thursday. Okay, definitely. So it's just 2 days' time. It'll be one to watch. Although I'm not that familiar with the constituency, but if we look at what we can see here, the majority. Let's ignore 2019 because it was a strange year. Get Brexit done. As I said before, this candidate has held on to this seat for a long time. 4 elections, sorry. Now he's not running. He's not there. So there'll be a new candidate. So they won't be able to hold on to that majority. That majority will drop. But it has to drop a significant amount. You need 2 things. You need Tories to stay at home because they don't know the candidate and they're not familiar with the candidate. To stay at home because they're not happy with the Conservatives. They're not happy with Boris Johnson. But at the same time, you need Labour and the Lib Dems to work together, and you need a pretty good turnout. So I hope the candidate that Labour are putting forward for this by-election is someone who's popular, somebody well known. I think that's the only way. And there's a real motivation, drive to get people to come out and vote. The Irish government argued that the voyage from Rosslare counted as a rest period for the drivers. Yes, TARS. That's a very valid point. So drivers who would normally go from Dublin to Holyhead or Rosslare to Pembroke would then would rest for a little bit on the ferry, and then they would drive all the way down through Great Britain to Dover. They would cross over. They probably wouldn't have much of a break there. So if they weren't driving for that long length of time on distance, they would have to take a number of breaks. Some drivers may not be able to take as many breaks as they want. So they're able to rest. I don't know how many. It's about 20 hours, I think, traveling from Rosslare to Cherbourg or Le Havre anyway. So you're talking about a long rest period. So they're fresh when they start out in Europe, while they would be less fresh, we could say, if they're passing through Dover. So it gives them more of a ability to drive for a longer period of time, I think. I feel sorry for England. They've only had 2 cheeks on the same arse to choose from. At least Wales Labour have reached out to Clyde. Yeah. Hopefully with the new cabinet, shadow cabinet that Labour have, maybe they'll be able to do a bit of damage to the Tories. A lot of the polling is saying that the Conservatives, if there was an election held tomorrow, they would lose 60 seats. I don't see that really happening, but it's possible. Where you'd end up with the Conservatives being the biggest party, but not with a majority. And an interesting alternative would be Labour, Lib Dems, and SNP. Now, would the SNP go into... the SNP would have 30 seats, I think. 50 seats, I think it is. So would the SNP go into coalition with the Labour Party? I don't know. Would the Labour Party want to go into coalition with the SNP? Could it be a case of the SNP just providing support to a minority Labour government? It'd be a significantly significant minority of a government because they would be something like 30 seats short of a majority if they went into coalition with the Lib Dems and the Greens. So it looks more and more likely that they would need the SNP to go with them. Okay, we'll move on. Brexit leaves EU-bound Christmas presents out in the cold. Brexit red tape. Yay, more red tape. People preparing to send Christmas parcels to friends and family in Europe face being caught out by post-Brexit red tape and charges that threaten to take some of the joy out of gift giving. A warning has been sounded that some of those who have sent gifts to the EU this year have encountered problems ranging from delays and unexpected charges to items going missing. This will be the first time most people have encountered rules that came in this year related to VAT and customs charges applying to items being posted to the EU. The consumer organisation which told The Observer that its research indicated that the vast majority of people know little or nothing about the new rules. This is like sending stuff to the United States or to China. Or the changes brought about by Brexit have created a great burden of customs paperwork for consumers and couriers alike, said Adam French, which consumer rights expert. You now have to attach customs declaration forms to anything you send, very clearly describing that this is where it has originated from. As part of the raft of Brexit changes that came in the 1st of January this year, the EU now treats postal items from the UK as they did non-EU items before. So, for example, I remember buying something from the United States many years ago. It was, I think, one of the very first tablets. I think I paid something like 90 euros for it. And the customs duty was 30 or 40 euros. I said, what the hell? So it wasn't really worth it at that stage. So that will be the case as well. And you don't know until the item arrives. So you end up either paying the customs or not paying it, and the item is sent back. And this is a pain for the person who has to take the item back. As a result, customs forms are now mandatory for all gifts and goods sent to a country outside the UK, except when sending items to Northern Ireland to the EU. From Northern Ireland to the EU. In some cases, the recipient may have to pay customs or VAT charges and a handling fee before they can claim the parcel, while general items imported to the EU with a value of 22 euros or less are now no longer exempt from VAT. And good news for UK consumers and for those receiving presents from them is that gifts under 45 euros that are being sent to Europe remain free of VAT or charges. DC, thanks so much for that super chat. Didn't hear the notification, but I saw your chat. The SNP go into coalition with Labour if they promise another independence referendum. Labour will never agree to it, though. I don't know about that. See, one thing is agreeing a referendum. The other is agreeing a referendum and support and campaigning for the union. Because I've said this before, if Boris Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg and the Tories believe the union is strong, then it can withstand a referendum. The same goes to Jeffrey Donaldson, Sir Jeffrey Donaldson of the DUP. Recently, he was claiming that there's not much support for United Ireland in the Republic of Ireland, and I replied to him on Twitter and I said, well then surely you would be happy to test that. If you're confident that the people of the Republic of Ireland don't want a United Ireland, let's test it with a referendum. The same with Scottish independence. If the Tories believe the union is strong, then they would have no problem they would actually be very happy to hold a second referendum on Scottish independence. They should be cheering it on because they believe the union is strong and they believe that the independence vote will be cancelled, will be defeated. So any attempt to become an independent country will be defeated because the majority of people in Scotland support staying in the union. If that's what the Tories say. So surely they would be very happy. They should be calling for a referendum tomorrow. But they're not. Why not? Because maybe they don't feel that the union is strong. So I think Labour may say we don't support, we won't agree to a second referendum. But once again, you can't say we won't agree to a second referendum. You can say you have to agree to a second referendum. Because that's Scotland's business. That's the will of the Scottish people. They voted for a party that promised them, as part of their manifesto, to hold a second referendum. So you're denying the people of Scotland something that they voted for. The Brexiteers use it all the time. Say, well, the Conservative Party, although they don't really use it, but sometimes they use it. They say, well, after the referendum, they say, well, people voted for a majority of Brexit supporting parties. But when it comes to independence, you have to give the Scottish people the referendum. Now, once again, giving people a referendum does not mean that they're going to vote to remain or they're going to vote to leave. That's the first step, is to allow people a referendum. So any Labour Party would say, yeah, we would be willing to give them a referendum, but that doesn't mean that we support them leaving the union. We'd be against that, but we understand that it's their democratic right. I'd like to actually ask, thanks so much for that super chat, DC. Once again, I'm not really answering your point here, but Labour will say we're against breaking up the union, but a referendum doesn't break up the union. The result of the referendum would break up the union, but a referendum alone does not break up the union. The last referendum didn't break up the union, so you can't say we're not going to give the Scots a referendum. The union is in big trouble, I reckon. It is. Let's be honest about this. The union is in big trouble in Northern Ireland and in Scotland, and to a much smaller extent in Wales. But you can't stop people from wanting something. If people want to have a referendum, you have to give it. And the more you try to stop them from having a referendum. See, look, it has to come to a stage where if the Tories were honest, but then the Tories are not honest, but if they were honest, they would say, okay, you can have your referendum, but we're going to convince the people to stay in the union. We're going to do whatever we can in an honest way, in a legal way, hopefully. That's what they should do. That's what Labour should do as well. Say, we are a unionist party. Labour is a unionist party. We're willing to agree to a second referendum. It's not, once again, it shouldn't be, we're going to give you the permission. No, it should be, we agree that a referendum should take place. For the Scottish people will vote in it. We're going to campaign for the union, but we're not going to interfere with the referendum. So we're going to provide what we believe are reasonable arguments in support of the union. Let's hope that the people, this is their belief, let's hope that the people come to our side. We're not going to try any dirty tricks or anything like that. And we expect the same from the other side. And the people will vote. And if they support leaving, we respect that. If they support to remain, we respect that too. What's wrong with doing that? Labour introduced a 40% rule in 1979. They didn't even want devolution, never mind independence. Pro-Indie Labour folk have already joined the SNP. And a lot of people have told me that as well, that even whatever's left of the Labour Party in Scotland, most of them are supportive of independence, but many have switched to the SNP, because you can find a home in the SNP if you're not, even if you're indifferent to independence, because the SNP is a progressive party. So it's, you're going to find more policies that agree with left-wing voters in the SNP. Won't the Brexiteers have the same reason as Leavers to convince Scots? Sorry, no, I'm confused. Won't the Brexiteers be having the same reasons as Leavers to convince Scots? The Brexiteers would be saying, the Brexiteers should actually be quiet on this issue, because the Brexiteers are saying we need to take back control. We need to be an independent nation. And some Brexiteers, Jeff Taylor, kudos to him. He's honest enough to say, look, I'm a Brexiteer, but I understand. It's ironic for me to say the Scotland should stay part of the Union. I haven't heard his recent arguments about that, but he's not supportive of independence. But he understands the irony of a Brexiteer saying, I don't want Scotland leaving. I think it should stay. But the Brexiteers will say that it's... the Brexiteers have a weird approach when it comes to Scottish independence. They will say, we don't want Scotland to leave, but we don't want to pay for Scotland. It's like they believe that they're paying for Scotland through taxes. Oh no, my stream is not doing very well tonight. I'm not sure what's wrong. But at the same time, they say we don't want Scotland to become independent, but we don't want to pay for Scotland, which is weird. Stuart, thanks so much for that super chat. Boris campaign to be a sovereign country, make their own decisions and take back control of their own affairs. The Scots want the same. Boris is saying no. The complete nonsense and hypocrisy. Yes, because Boris Johnson isn't really about people being independent or taking back control. It's just bluster. But he understands that it's bluster that will benefit him. Guys, tell me if you're noticing any buffering or anything, because what's behind Jess' curtain? You don't want to know. I've seen it, and it's scary. But staying with Stuart's question or point, Boris Johnson cares about maintaining his position. He wants to be prime minister. He wants to be prime minister forever, I think, or for at least another while. And he doesn't want to be the prime minister who broke up the union. It's not so much about him, but it's about his legacy or about his reputation. I know he doesn't. Boris Johnson caring about a reputation. I don't think he wants to be the prime minister who broke up the union, or who oversaw the breakup of the union on his watch. So I don't think he wants that. But does he care about Scotland? Obviously not. Does he care about Northern Ireland? Not one bit. So I wouldn't expect him to. He's not. He's going to try and stop it, because he doesn't want Scotland to become independent. Because, as we're seeing with Northern Ireland, if Scotland became independent in a similar way to Northern Ireland is benefiting from the Northern Ireland Protocol, it's sort of embarrassing for Brexiteers. We've seen numerous stories now that Northern Ireland is benefiting from its unique status, and Brexiteers are not happy with that, because they want people in Northern Ireland to experience empty supermarket shelves like in Britain. Kerr said in a TV interview that he wouldn't allow Indie. See, this is the thing about Keir Starmer. He says things, but I don't know how much he means. Because he was saying Keir Starmer is not playing to the Scottish audience. He doesn't care about the Scottish audience. He's not there to win over the Scots. Now, I think he needs to win over the Scots if he wants to maintain some sort of foothold in Scotland. The toehold at this stage. But I think he needs to win them over, and saying we're against independence is not going to win people over. But at the same time, he has to appear, look, I'm against breaking up the union. I'm going to be one nation Tory. No, I'm going to be, if I'm Prime Minister, I'm going to protect the union. I'm going to fight for the union. That's what every Prime Minister is supposed to say. So if he came out and said, yeah, I would support an independence referendum, no, it would be political disaster for him. He can't say that. It would ruin his career. The Tories would love for him to say that, because then they would say, look, he's a traitor. He's willing to destroy the union. He's not to be trusted. It doesn't actually benefit Starmer at all, saying he would support a second independence referendum. And it might be politically savvy to say, no, I would be against it, then get into power and then deliver it. But it will be difficult how does he get into power? That's the catch-22. In order to get into power, he would need the SNP on board. And the SNP requirement from the SNP, of course, would be a second referendum. Unless something happens behind the scenes, but then that could damage the SNP. The SNP would prefer something, out in the open, an agreement out in the open. But the Labour Party wouldn't want that. So it's very difficult to see how this is going to work out. See, this is the problem with first past the post. First past the post makes it extremely difficult for the Labour Party to form a government. The Brexiteers play the anti-English card, and I'm tired of hearing it. Even in Rhodes, they say that if they want an independent Scotland, then we are anti-English. It's totally rubbish. But that's like saying, I like chips, so you're anti-pizza, or something like that, or you're anti-potatoes. Not potatoes. I like you're anti-bread or something. No, if you want to be independent, does not mean that you're anti-English. I've never actually heard. Now, are there anti-English people who are supporters of Scottish independence? Of course there are. There are also, you'll find anti-somewhat. There's, in every movement there are people who are anti-something. So yes, there are some anti-English people within the Scottish independence movement, because it's a very wide church. But it doesn't mean that Scottish independence is naturally anti-English. It's anti-Westminster. It doesn't agree with Westminster. It's Westminster that rules over Scotland, or Scottish affairs. It's not the English per se. Although some people may disagree with me on that. John Bob, should we open a Kickstarter to get Max a peerage? So what I need to do is save up £10,000, donate it to the the nearest is quite far away. I donate it to the Conservative Party. Then they give me a contract for PPE. Then what I do is I go on wish.com and I buy PPE. It doesn't matter what the quality of the PPE is. It doesn't matter. It's not going to be used anyway. And then I sell it to the NHS for 3,000 or 4,000% markup. Make lots of money. Donate some more to the Conservative Party, and then they put me in the House of Lords. There we go. And everyone's happy. a victimless crime, apart from those who have to rely on the PPE. Scotland is saying we want a quarter of the pizza with anchovies, but England is saying no fish on our pizza. I'm English and I support Scotland leaving the Union. There we go. You don't have to be Scottish to support Scottish independence. You say that, but would you wear an English shirt in Edinburgh or Glasgow? Good point, perhaps. But then, would you wear a Glasgow Celtic shirt in East Belfast? Probably not either. But also here in Italy, you wouldn't wear a Milan shirt in Naples. You wouldn't survive 10 minutes. So I think we all have our disagreements. Be a negotiator, Max. Okay, let's move on. This is an interesting story. So what's happening at the moment is my good friend, very good friend, Ben Habib, member of the Brexit Party, used to be a member of the European Parliament, who voted for the withdrawal agreement, which contains the Northern Ireland Protocol. He voted for it in the European Parliament, but he wants it stopped. He wants it trashed, dumped. So it says here, and what's happened is he and some others, unionist members of the DUP as well, have started a legal case against the British government, saying that the protocol undermines the Act of Union 1800. Dr. Johan, thanks so much for hey you too. Thanks so much for your comments and your super chat. Greatly appreciated. I have to get back to you. You sent me a few messages, so hope you're well. Stay safe over there in Germany. Thanks again. So the Unionists and Ben Habib want to remove. They say that the Northern Ireland Protocol is in conflict with the Act of Union 1800, and this has been rejected by a Belfast High Court, the High Court in Belfast. So they appealed the decision, and it's still going through the process of appeal, but it's not going very well. So it says here, the Northern Ireland Brexit Protocol has not shattered the constitutional status of Northern Ireland within the UK, as some unionists have argued. A government lawyer has told a court in Belfast. Actually, this is something I wanted to do a video on, but I'll just mention it here. Ironically, the Northern Ireland Protocol, which the unionists want to get rid of, could actually be used as an argument against a united Ireland. Now, how is this the case? It's not a guarantee, but it could be used. It should be used. If I was a unionist, I would be using the Northern Ireland Protocol as an argument against a united Ireland, because what it does is it has created a situation where Northern Ireland is benefiting at the expense of the United Kingdom, the expense of Great Britain, following Brexit. So Northern Ireland is inside the single market for goods, but it also has frictionless access to the UK internal market. So it has access to two markets. Businesses in the rest of the EU do not have this access, and businesses in Great Britain do not have this access. So it's a unique benefit. If Northern Ireland became part of a united Ireland, it would lose this benefit. Now, if I was a unionist, I would be very happy with that, because that's a very strong argument. But the problem is that these unionists hate the protocol. They want to get rid of the protocol. They're not very clever people, it seems. Tonson, thanks so much for that super chat. Very kind of you. Thumbs up to you too. No, Max. The Tories want to spoon feed Northern Ireland sumpter sovereignty. Starter looked good, but after 8 or 9 flags, it was full. Very good, Gareth. Very kind as well as the super chat. Yeah, it wants more and more sovereignty. Sovereignty. So it says here, Tony McGleenan, QC, Queen's Counsel, was opening his defence of the protocol against a legal challenge brought by a group of unionist politicians, including the traditional unionist voice Jim Allister, not Jim McAllister, Jim Allister, the former Labour Party MP Kate Hoey. Why was she ever in the Labour Party? She's a right-wing demagogue. And the former Brexit Party MEP Ben Habib. The Three Stooges. These... but once again, this idea... Okay, never mind. Anyway, let's move on. No, I just wanted to comment here is that the British government is defending the protocol in court. The British government, okay? The same British government that keeps saying that the protocol isn't working. Just think about that for a moment, okay? The Queen's Counsel, so representing the government, the UK government, is defending the Northern Ireland Protocol in court, while at the same time you have Lord Frost attacking the protocol in the House of Lords. Anyway, McLennan rejected, in a landmark case that they have contested that the withdrawal agreement and the Act of Parliament changed the constitutional status of Northern Ireland and conflicted with the Acts of Union of 1800. McLennan rejected those arguments. He told senior judges there has been no change in the constitutional status of Northern Ireland. He added the suggestion that there has been some shattering of the union is, we say, unsustainable. The Northern Ireland Protocol came into force on the 1st of January and mandates checks and controls on goods crossing from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. This is because under the Brexit compromise, to avoid a border on the island of Ireland, Northern Ireland remains in the UK, but it is also for trade purposes in the European single market, which means EU customs and standard checks still apply on goods entering the region. Once again, and I've said this on numerous occasions, this applies to goods, not to people. Now, how is Northern Ireland's constitutional status affected if this is applying to goods? Once again, not people. You don't need to show your passport. You don't need to... once again, guys, I'm getting some notifications about the stream, so if you see some buffering, tell me. This affects goods, not people. Reviewing the course of the UK's departure from the EU, McLennan argued that the political cost of the withdrawal agreement included a section of Northern Ireland was known to the parties involved in the case, with two of them expressing strong support for it. Ben Habib voted. I think Ben Habib and Kate Hoey voted. Or maybe it was also... No, it was Jim Allister voted for the withdrawal agreement when they were members of the European Parliament, which the two expressed strong support for it. It has been subjected to debate for 3 years, and its political force was expressed by at least two of the parties involved in the case, Habib and Hoey, yes. No, I thought it was Jim Allister, okay. Those taking the case have argued that the protocol is unlawful because it conflicts with the Acts of Union and the Good Friday Agreement in 1998. They haven't presented any evidence for the latter. Their claim for the former is that it undermines the Act of Union. And the Act of Union is a weird law that it was written, it was future-proofed. It was filled up with lots of RAM, and this baby was going to last for centuries. No, the Act of Union is not future-proofed. Okay, it can be superseded. Those acting in the case have proved that it was okay. The High Court rejected their first challenge this summer, and they are appealing against the verdict in its expedited case. John Larkin QC for the appellants said references to the debate in Parliament and expressions of support or otherwise for Brexit were a distraction because legally all that counted were the words of the statutes of Parliament. Yeah, it doesn't matter if these, Ben Habib and Kate Hoey and all these people were praising Brexit at the beginning, not understanding what it was about. probably he's right here. Yes, you can't really, from a legal point of view, it doesn't matter what these idiots said in the past. It stands or falls on its own merits. But it is ironic that these people supported Brexit and now are attempting to undo Brexit. On Monday, judges were told the Acts of Union had legal supremacy over the protocol. No, they don't. Larkin told them the protocol could not be validly made because it was in conflict with the provision of the Constitution of the United Kingdom, that is Article 6 of the Acts of Union. On Tuesday, McGlean challenged the claim, saying the arguments that the Act of Union has interpretive supremacy, that it dominates later provisions, we say that is wrong. Yeah, of course. Laws are not... Some laws remain, some laws are replaced by others. Some acts are replaced by others. The Act of Union of 1800 included Ireland. Ireland is no longer part of the United Kingdom. Northern Ireland is, but not Ireland. He said that if there were conflicts between the 1800 Act of Law and the protocol, that they were legally irrelevant, as Section 7A of the Withdrawal Act allows for the protocol to continue to have an effect in domestic law. So as long as it's part of domestic law, which it is, because remember there was the Withdrawal Agreement Act, which was passed by Parliament, so then it's part of domestic law. People seem to think that the withdrawal agreement is just some sort of European thing. No, it was written into UK law and European law. So they're trying to say, well, no, it's not part of UK law. Yes, it is. Oh, these are interesting times, interesting people. Let me go back to some of your comments. I really wonder if the Tory MPs believe Scotland succeeds from the Union, or will they enjoy greasy pockets? It would be interesting to see what would happen, and I'm really curious about this. Douglas Ross, the Tory leader in Scotland, Douglas Murray, as Boris Johnson calls him, Douglas Ross, who's a referee, I think, a part-time. He's a full-time referee, part-time politician. He, in an independent Scotland, what would he become? That would be interesting, no? He'd be a Tory, or he'd be a Conservative with a small c. But, independence, Scotland would be an independent country at that stage. And I'm curious also to apply this to, for example, the DUP, members of the DUP. If there was a United Ireland tomorrow, what would happen to them? Would they some of them would probably spontaneously combust, but some of them I think would join the main parties in Ireland, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, because they want to make money. They like power and they like money, and being a politician is easy money. You don't have to do a lot. Just take part in a few committees and stuff. And some of them may actually go on to become MEPs. Wouldn't that be ironic? Members of the DUP who would join Irish parties and then go on to become MEPs, members of the European Parliament. Oh, I can definitely see that happening. Not immediately, of course, but I could see that happening. And can you imagine if Scotland becomes a member of the European Union? Douglas Ross or Douglas Murray or whatever his name could eventually become an MEP. I think I don't think a lot of people would like to see that happen, but it could happen. Technically, yes, he could become an MEP, member of the European Parliament for Scotland. That's a crazy idea, but it's not impossible. Douglas Ross would be a professional coin collector. It's like, heads or tails, can I have my coin back? What coin? Douglas would become unemployed. He'd probably have a big fat pension to sit on anyway. Douglas Ross whinging for more. The Swaney fellow Tory, he must be related to the starchy doctor in the Green Wing. when he said in the comments to Sajid Javid, this is a mumbo jumbo that it is. It must be, yes. Money is money, Max. Yes, it is. One person's rent is another person's income. Fine Gael are going to get hammered next time out. It looks like Sinn Féin are going to become the biggest party in Ireland at the next election. Will they have enough to form a government? I don't know. But if the trend continues, yes, they could actually form a government, perhaps on their own. That would be interesting to see. David McGuinness, thanks so much for that super chat. Starmer can't get into power without Scottish MPs. Yeah, they used to have 40, I think at the highest recently, in the recent history, they had 44 MPs in Scotland. Now they have one. Thanks for that super chat, David. It's not... I think under Starmer things may improve, but I don't know if it takes, they're not even campaigning in Scotland, I don't think. Of course, there isn't an election at the moment, but there is no real presence in Scotland. And, one MP, it's actually probably worse. If they had no MPs, it would actually be worse than having one MP. No, it'd actually be worse to have a one MP than no MPs. Because at least if you had no MPs, you could campaign to try and win back some support. But it's difficult if you have only one, because it's sort of embarrassing. It's a sort of, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but it'd be easier to go in and start campaigning against the SNP, because you'd have nothing to lose. But having one MP, you're like, maybe we don't want to lose this guy, so they're going to take a very non-aggressive approach, which they would need to do. But I can't give any advice to the Labour Party in Scotland, because they don't want to sell policies that would help them win seats. They're against the union in Scotland. That's why I think you need to have two parties. You need to have a Labour Party in Scotland, like in Wales, which is quite autonomous, that can disagree with the party in Westminster. Sir Keir is a Tory in a red tie. Somewhere Caroline Lucas is crying. We need to build more than one Wicker Man. Stuart Mackay. One for Alistair Jack, one for David Mundell, and one for Douglas Five Jobs to us. Heads you win, tails you lose. But what about the edges, I guess? Thanks for reading the previous one out. Terrible recitation, Max. Work on it. It'll be funnier then, isn't it? Ah, yes. David, thanks so much for that super chat. Sorry for typing error. Being on the go since 3 a.m. Man, you need to take a break. Okay, you're driving all the time and you're doing videos and you're following the commentary, following the news and everything. So take it easy, David. Thanks for that super chat. Don't worry about the typos. Okay, guys, and sorry, let me read one more. And that's because Scottish Labour, the night of Indie Reference 2014. Yeah, it's like since 2014, it was things really went downhill for Scottish Labour. I don't know if they'll completely disappear, but they're definitely on the way. It's difficult for them because they can't support the union because it's becoming less and less popular, and anyone who is supportive of the union is more likely to go to the Conservatives. So they're a bit homeless. Who are they reaching out to? If they're reaching out to the left, well, most of the left in Scotland are supportive of independence. So those people will go to the SNP or they go to the Green Party. So who do Labour represent in Scotland? Left-wing unionists in Scotland? There aren't a great number of those, I don't think. I think they're getting smaller and smaller all the time. Good night, all, Max. Stay safe and keep well. Good night, Audrey. Take care. thanks for coming on tonight. Great to see you on the chats, on the chat on the channel as well. So guys, let's take a small break, and we'll get back to the serious stuff in a moment. So we'll just have our comedy moment as we're halfway through the stream, and then we'll be back with the serious business in a jiffy. Enjoy.
Well, he was so upset when the doctor rejuvenated into that lady who lost her kid in Broadchurch. And when she were going round, brandishing round the supersonic screwdriver, he was like, Katie, that's a man's thingy. That's a man's thingy. It belongs in a man's package, in a man's drawers. He can't even look at his screwdriver now, and he says he's considering crime. One day I came home and he were in tears. He said, Katie, they're all talking about a female James Bond on Twitter. That's what he calls Twitter, because he says it's overrun by ladies now. Sobbing, he was saying, who will the lads look up to if there's a lady licensing to kill all over the place? They'll lose their way. Anyway, recently I got home and he was just sat at the table clutching a Kellogg's cereal variety 8-pack. And I said, Nick, why'd you buy that? And he said, Katie, I didn't. I stole it. He saw Queen Latifah in The Equalizer and he just snapped. Anyway, he thinks Top Gear could be next.
Top Gear could be next. Oh, yes. So, let's move on. Oh my God, Boris Johnson. So Boris Johnson contradicts expert advice to cancel Christmas socialising. PM tells people not to cancel parties or nativity plays despite concerns over Omicron variant. You know, somebody was asking me at the beginning of the stream, will Boris Johnson do the wrong thing? And yes, Boris Johnson will do the wrong thing. That's the only thing Boris Johnson, if you want to predict something, just think of something logical and Boris Johnson will do the opposite. Anyway, it says here, Boris Johnson has contradicted leading scientists and one of his most senior health officials who advised people to cut back on unnecessary socialising in response to Omicron, as he urged people not to cancel their Christmas parties or nativity plays. He wants to be popular. It's all about being bloody popular. It's not about leading the country. That was over as soon as he became Prime Minister. And I still rack my brain to try and understand, why did people vote for this guy in 2019? Yes, he's a bit of a joke. He still has a significant amount of support. The Prime Minister said the best thing to do is to counter the threat of the COVID variant was to get booster jabs. It's one of the ways of doing it, but you have to also protect people. It's not a silver bullet. With a massive NHS effort backed by the army to offer all adults one by the end of January. By the end of January. So it's not going to have it done by the end of this week. Then you could sort of say, okay, if everyone is protected, but then it takes time for the jab to have its effect. Asked if he would say to schools scaling back nativity plays and people dropping out of Christmas events, John said, "We don't want people to cancel such events. We think that overwhelmingly the best thing for kids is to be in school, as I've said many times throughout this pandemic." But one thing is to be in school learning. The other is to be doing an activity play. Is an activity play really fundamental? I know it's a positive thing about Christmas, but is it fundamental to children's education? I don't know. He also stressed that guidance to wear masks on public transport and in shops was enough at this stage. Despite Jenny Harleys, the chief executive of the UK's Health Security Agency, suggesting people should reduce their social contact as fears grow that existing vaccines will prove less effective against the Omicron variant. Yes, it's not just. It's this idea that, well, if you receive the jab, then you're like Spider-Man or something, or Spider-Man's not a good example, like Superman or something. You're not going to be impacted by this. Yes, you can still be impacted by this. It protects you from serious illness, but it doesn't stop you from spreading it. Max, the argument is not left or right, rather it's those who have continue to take from those who have not. Anyone fancy a French-style revolution to sort this out? Well, Barbados have done it a very bloodless way. That was interesting. Getting rid of their queen. Johnson and Company love nativity plays. They're an excuse for not reading trade arrangements. Well said, Mark. Yes, that was the case back in 2020 when, oh my goodness, the minister responsible for fisheries didn't bother to read Boris Johnson's agreement with the European Union because she was doing a nativity play or some nativity something. I don't remember what it was. And she even said, yeah, I didn't know. I didn't read it because I was doing a nativity play or something with kids. At the most fundamental moment in UK's history in recent times. Yeah, I wasn't following the history. I wasn't following the news. I wasn't doing my job, basically. It's like if you are responsible for the rollout of, imagine if Peter Jackson from, who directed The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, even better, Lord of the Rings is better than The Hobbit. Imagine if he didn't turn up at the premiere. Or he didn't, no, it's worse than that. He didn't turn up when they were doing the final edit or something like that. He was like, yeah, it'll be probably okay. Do you want to have a look at it? No, it's okay. Go ahead. I've spent 10 years of my life on this thing. It should be okay at this stage. Anyway, it wouldn't have made really much difference if she got involved because Lord Frost knew what he was doing, right? He was made a lord because of his great work in negotiating with the European Union. Of course, our behaviours in Christmas, in winter, and particularly around Christmas, we tend to socialise more. So I think all of these will need to be taken into account. The former Deputy Chief Medical Officer for England told BBC Radio 4 Today programme. So I think the solution being careful, not socialising when you don't particularly need to, and particularly going and getting those booster jabs. With 22 cases of Omicron now confirmed, including one in Nottingham University student, and 9 linked to social event in Scotland, senior scientists suggesting it would be wise for people to cut back on their social activities. We've been here down this road before. Some scientists and Labour raised concerns that the government was not going far enough. Professor John Edmonds of the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicines and a member of the SAGE group said Jen Harries is, of course, correct. Reducing our social contact now will slow the establishment of the new virus in our country, and it will help reduce the spread of the Delta virus, which we've been struggling with. If you are intended to socialise, go to the office, then the risk can be significantly reduced by taking a lateral flow test beforehand, which people are not going to do. So it's another case of, Boris Johnson not leading. Boris Johnson's supposed to be the leader of the country, providing a good example, and you might as well. It's like having Donald Trump in charge. Complete indifference, because it doesn't really affect him. Tory cuts with gaps filled with the army on an increasingly regular basis is so shameful. Apparently, they're even being paid the same rate as NHS staff, giving the same jabs, as reported today by the BBC on the BBC. Normally the army are for disaster relief. It shouldn't be regular. Why don't the government reward failure? Why does the government reward failure, Frost, and then the bloody army generals in charge in Afghanistan? I think it's because they claim to be to believe in meritocracy, and they believe in the opposite of meritocracy idiocracy. I don't know, what is the opposite of meritocracy? Idiocracy? I remember, the Tories. I remember a caller to James O'Brien's show, and she said she's a conservative because she believes in meritocracy. This was a few years ago. And I was still, no, you don't. They were like, yeah, we only want to hire the best people. We should only reward the best people. No, it's about people who have money. Those are the ones who benefit, who do not struggle in life. They are the ones who are well off, and continue to be well off, and are in a position where they can maintain that status. If you want to invest money, the best way to invest money is to buy a Tory MP, preferably a minister, even the Prime Minister. If you can buy Boris Johnson, you can be extremely rich in a very short amount of time. Normally the army is used for corporate asset seizure and peace and things like that. Good point. Strange Love the Doctor. Boris is a total Sopwith camel from World War I, a mule to control. What about carers with illnesses like me looking after my mum and my mum looking after me? No information. And once again, it's my heart goes out to people who are, who originally were isolating because they had to avoid the public and because they were vulnerable. And once again, I think we're going down this road where Johnson and the Tories just don't care. You see this stupid idiot, and I can't say it strong enough. Brexit hardman Steve Baker in the House of Commons. Actually, I want to show you this clip because where is he? Let me see. Let me find the link. Here we go.
The flavour of some of those Tory rebels speaking.
We're looking at a pingdemic that's going to devastate education again, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and after everything that we've learnt.
This is a fundamental choice, I would say, between heading towards heaven and heading towards hell.
Asking people, this is what he's talking about, asking people to wear a mask again is heading towards hell. Now, does he believe this? Of course he does not. He's a cynical politician. But he understands that this can benefit him in some way, appearing tough. I don't know what his end goal is. Does he want to become Prime Minister someday? I don't know. But this is about, I think this is about creating a power base within the Conservative Party. We've seen it with the COVID recovery group. We saw it with the Northern Recovery Group. We saw it all of these, the ERG, for example. He used to be a member of the ERG, the European Research Group. Yeah. What was the research? Yeah, the Express. Yeah, that's where we do our research. This is about creating power bases within the Conservative Party, influential bases. So they, at the moment, when it came to this vote in the House of Commons, thankfully, they lost by a huge margin. But they are demonstrating that this was a loss for them, but they're able to show the party we can organize. And if you want, when there comes a time when there's a vote and Boris Johnson or others don't have the party itself, the government doesn't have a massive majority, then we step forward and you need to give us some concessions. I've seen it before. I've seen it before in Dáil Éireann in the Irish Parliament, where you have a sort of case of the tail wagging the dog. And we saw it with the ERG when Theresa May was Prime Minister. A small group punching well above their weight and undemocratic in a sense. What I mean by Dáil Éireann, in the past there are, a party wants to form a government. They are short of a number of members of parliament, TDs, and there are a few independent TDs. And then these independent TDs demand a ransom from the government, from the coalition. Now, they will say it's for their constituents, but it's a case of them being able to dictate and stop policy passing. And there have been a number of cases where the government are trying to do something, maybe something good, and you have one independent member of parliament blocking everything. And I think that's what the likes of Steve Baker and others want to do. This is not about masks. This is about him, marking his territory.
If we continue to react to these fears and uncertainties by taking the authoritarian course without impact assessments, because they're only temporary, then we are embarked on that downward course.
This is all theatre. It's all about, look at me, I'm standing up to the government, I'm standing up to the party. This is about, once again, him. Look, this is not about masks. This is not about freedom. If this guy was pro-freedom, then he wouldn't have voted to end people's freedom of movement. He wouldn't have been a supporter of Brexit. But this is about him. This is about him stamping his authority in the House of Commons and within the party.
Quite dramatic language, as you can hear, and quite a few Tory MPs that I spoke to after that vote were saying that it's all very well for the Prime Minister to say, don't cancel Christmas parties. People only hear the last three words, one MP said. And here's a...
I'm not sure what they mean by that. Anyway, let's move on. So I actually want to show you this. No, we'll stay with. No, sorry, one more. I'm a bit confused tonight. Where did I put it? Ah, crap. One moment, guys. Sorry about this. Okay.
The eerily quiet international airport in Johannesburg. Just a few passengers praying they can leave. As nations around the world close their doors to South Africa or impose strict quarantine rules as they have in the UK, a warning was sounded today. In an exclusive interview with Channel 4 News, a leading professor of vaccinology accused these countries of preventing the very collaboration needed to deal with the new COVID variant, Omicron.
A huge problem here is that we in the West have held on to a lot of the vaccines and we haven't provided them to the poorer nations. Those poorer nations were not able to roll out the vaccine as well as we did because for a number of reasons. Some of the reasons many people point to it's because of resistance within those countries. That is part of the problem, but a lot of the problem is also infrastructure. There years of war and underdevelopment, it's difficult to get the vaccines out to small villages or whatever. But because these countries have not been vaccinated to the same level as we have, and I said this before, I said none of us are protected until we're all protected. And because these countries haven't had the same rollout as we have, that means that they have been more exposed to the variant, and then the variant, new variants, to the virus, and we have seen new variants arise. And the way to stop the variants is to immunize or vaccinate as many people as possible. But we're not doing that. We're hoarding vaccines. Cahill, thanks so much for that super chat. You might wish to be sat at Johnson's table at the dinner dance. If you just listen to him, not checking actual outcomes, he might seem a fine MP. Probably. I think Johnson, that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see Johnson when there's no cameras about. Johnson behind closed doors. Allegedly, he's a ruthless individual. And we have seen his mask slip from time to time. Thanks so much for that super chat, Cahill.
When those flights are infrequent, it basically hampers your ability to scale up your research, which is exactly what we need to do. And in fact, it's also disadvantageous to the collaborations we set up. So we needing to export, in fact, virus as well as samples to collaborators for them to do their part of the work.
10 southern African countries are on the UK's red list, meaning visitors will have to pay to go into a quarantine hotel on arrival. Last time South Africa was cut off from international travel, they struggled in accessing vital ingredients, including reagents, critical for testing for COVID-19. Now scientists fear this will happen again. South Africa was the first to report the emergence of a variant with an abnormal number of mutations 6 days ago. It was from a specimen collected on the 9th of November from Botswana. And yet in the mystery that remains behind this variant, the Dutch health authority said today that Omicron was already in the country when South Africa reported it to the WHO. Cases are rising sharply, along with hospitalizations in South Africa's Gauteng province, although a briefing yesterday said they currently appear to be mild and mainly in the unvaccinated. But once again, this has shone a light on vaccine inequity. Data shows that 20 countries have vaccination rates of less than 3% of their populations, and all but 2 of those countries are in Africa, with Burundi, for instance, having fully jabbed fewer than 800 of its almost 12 million residents. Not all of it is to do with supply.
800 out of 11 million.
Conflict in infrastructure and hesitancy are also causing problems. Professor Mahdi said misinformation also fed into the chasm left by the delayed rollout.
By the time these vaccines become available, your back is against the wall in terms of fighting this misinformation. So I think that's one of the major driving factors.
And this is where Facebook and other social media tools come in. So doctors are trying to fight 2 battles. They're trying to fight the virus and they're trying to fight misinformation. And unfortunately, misinformation has is halfway around the world while the truth is putting its trousers on.
But I do believe another major problem that we're experiencing, certainly in South Africa, and I believe that this will be the case for most of the rest of Africa, is the issue of apathy.
It is still unclear about vaccine efficacy against Omicron, but the UK is pressing ahead with a massive booster rollout. All adults to be offered the jab by the end of January, on the understanding they will provide some protection.
Today, our position is and always will be immeasurably better than it was a year ago. What we're doing is taking some proportionate precautionary measures while our scientists crack the Omicron code.
And more cases of the virus have been reported in the UK today, though still in the low 20s.
The recent cases that we've confirmed today, we're not able to say whether or not, at this point, because we don't know. We're doing that work right now at speed to determine whether they all have a link to South Africa or not. Is there likely to be community transmission? I think we have to be realistic. There is likely to be, as we're seeing in other European countries. And also, as I said earlier, that we would expect cases to rise as we now actively look for cases.
Brighton Racecourse today, and they were queuing for their boosters. The time between shots now reduced from 6 to 3 months.
I just wanted it done as soon as possible anyway, and now I've hit the criteria. It means that I can come here and get sorted out.
Obviously, it is a different variant, so it's quite worrying, but I think it's, reason we're up here today, if you can get all your boosters or your first jab or your second jab or whatever, we do our best to combat it, really. So, I think as long as everyone's sensible.
It was announced today, too, that the army will be drafted in along with volunteers to help jab the population, with the target 14 million boosters.
Victoria McDonald, well, this afternoon.
Okay, so we'll see what the results of that will be. Let the bodies pile high. Let's pile the bodies high. Ton, yes. Thanks for that super chat. Boris Johnson, the wrong person in charge at the wrong possible time. And I've said this before, if Jeremy Corbyn had won in 2019, he would have taken this seriously. Whether you agree with Jeremy Corbyn or not, he would have taken this seriously, and the approach would have been completely different. You would not have seen the corruption involved, and you would not see the number of deaths involved. And of course, you would have the Conservatives on the other side, whoever was in charge, Boris Johnson maybe or someone else, would have been attacking the government at every moment, in a way that the Labour Party are not attacking the government at the moment, or were not attacking the government during the pandemic. Okay, talking about the Labour Party, I want to show you this clip. So Keir Starmer reshuffled his cabinet yesterday, and we're seeing old faces but new faces for some. So I want to show you this clip with David Lammy.
The deaths of 27 people should have acted as a sobering moment for the British and French governments. These were human beings, not migrants. But instead, both governments have engaged in a petty public spat. And this incompetence is costing lives.
Now, I disagree with him, but I understand what he's doing this. It's not France's fault. These people want to get to Britain. So it's Britain's responsibility to provide a safe channel for these people to get to Britain. But I understand that the Labour Party can't be seen as defending the French here, because the public don't understand this. The public see, well, why aren't the French doing their job? Why aren't they keeping these people who want to get to Britain? Why don't they keep them in France? So is this an attempt by David Lammy and the Labour Party to let the government off the hook in a way, in the sense that they're blaming the French as well? So the French and the British government are at fault here.
How can the government hope to maintain good relations around the world with a Prime Minister who's more interested in burning bridges than building them?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, can I welcome the Shadow Foreign Secretary to his place? It was a tragic incident that happened in the Channel last week, and I'd like to extend my condolences, and I'm sure everyone around there has today.
Yes.
Would like to extend their condolences to the families of those people who lost their lives last week.
They didn't have to lose their lives. If there was a safe channel for them to arrive in the UK, they wouldn't have lost their lives. I've said this before. Now, would it be very popular? Of course not. But why not send a few ferries over to... If you're... The worst thing that's happening here is people dying. You want to stop that. If the worst thing that's happening here is also that these evil, disgusting people traffickers are profiting from this, then you know how we could stop this? You could send ferries over to pick people up and bring them to Britain and process their asylum claims in Britain, which you're supposed to do anyway. But you don't want to do that. But then if you don't want to do that, then how are these people supposed to arrive?
While trying to get across to the UK. As the Prime Minister said, this was a shocking, appalling and deeply saddening loss of life.
Well, if Boris Johnson said it, then he obviously means the opposite.
The Prime Minister did speak to French President Macron on the 24th of November. They agreed on the urgency of stepping up joint efforts to prevent these deadly crossings and to stop the gangs responsible for putting people's lives at risk. And the Prime Minister has, as we know, written to President Macron on this issue. The UK and French ministers do discuss issues in the UK-France bilateral relationship, including the Home Secretary, who's working closely with her French counterpart on the issue of small boats and is in regular contact.
Although she's not invited. She was not invited. Priti Patel was rejected. So just staying with the crossings, I want to show you this story here. I don't want to just go to some of your comments. Channel crossings are an English issue, says French minister. So it says here, senior French ministers have accused the UK of operating a labour market akin to slavery and called on London to open safe routes for migrants as the two governments continue to deflect blame from last week's drowning in the Channel. The criticism came hours after the French Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin held a crisis meeting with European ministers and border agencies to discuss the migrant emergency across the Channel ports. around the Channel ports. The UK Home Secretary Priti Patel was disinvited to a meeting after Boris Johnson riled President Emmanuel Macron by publishing a letter calling on France to accept people being returned, and called for British troops or border police to patrol French beaches. Once again, can you imagine if the French said, we want to send French soldiers to patrol British beaches? What would the Daily Mail or the Express, how would they react to that? Darmanin said cross-channel migration was first and foremost an English issue, and Britain must accept its responsibilities. Today, people who want to seek asylum in England have no other means than to cross the Channel. This is because there is no legal way for migrants to get to go to Great Britain, and because you can work without identity papers in England, and that creates a demand. This is an interesting comment. Is he telling the truth here? That maybe it's better to have people come across because they can be exploited? It certainly happens here in Italy. I don't know what's happening in the UK. For example, a lot of migrant workers picking oranges, picking tomatoes in the south of Italy. Many of these migrants are working 15, 16 hours a day, very low pay, living in terrible conditions. And somebody's making a lot of money out of it. So is the same thing happening in Britain? I don't know. He added that France accepted 150,000 asylum applications a year compared to 30,000 in the UK. Which, if you compare France and the UK, they're similar in size and population. France's European Affairs Minister, Clement Beaune, also hit back at the UK, accusing it of having an economic model of sometimes quasi-modern slavery that he said encouraged desperate people to attempt perilous channel crossings. So this is interesting. This is an interesting comment that the French are saying that the UK wants to maintain these types of channels where it's difficult for people to come in, because if they don't get processed, they will go missing in a sense in the country, and they will end up working in the black economy. That's an interesting accusation. I don't know if it's true. So, well, guys, we're almost at the end of the stream tonight, but I want to show you some more videos. I want to show you. No, we'll go to Lisa and Andy. So I just want to talk a little bit more about Keir Starmer's reshuffle. So we saw David Lammy there. Labour reshuffle, a focus on big beasts and savvy performers. So reshuffle seems an understatement given the radical scope of the shake-up Keir Starmer carried out among Labour's top ranks on Monday, with few posts left untouched. Starmer's aides said it completed the work began in May's botched overhaul, which saw Annalise Dodds replaced by Rachel Reeves as Shadow Chancellor, but was derailed by Angela Rayner, who resisted a move for herself. Changes for both John Ashworth and Lisa Nandy were mooted at the time and have now been acted on. And this time around, Starmer publicly asserted his authority over Rayner, with whom relations have continued to be scratchy. By kicking off the reshuffle, she was delivering a major speech in Westminster on clearing up public life. She was briefly informed that the shake-up was underway, but not consulted, though Jeremy Corbyn certainly didn't consult his deputy Dom Watson on the makeup of his shadow team either. The end result marked a shift to the political right and created a powerful platform for rising stars Wes Streeting and Bridget Phillipson, both viewed as effective media performers. Wes Streeting, I'm not familiar with Bridget Phillipson. I'll have to check her out. But Wes Streeting is very good at speaking, very good at presenting. He's politically, he's media savvy, I should say. Shadow cabinet ministers had recently complained about how much airtime Streeting was getting, despite holding a relatively junior post of shadow schools minister. As shadow health secretary in the midst of the pandemic, he will now have be a key spokesperson and public face of the potential future Labour Party. Now, I think what's happened here is that senior former Tory people like Alistair Campbell have probably got on the phone to, or have sat down with Keir Starmer and said, this is what you need to do. You need to choose people popular. And he said this in a video that I uploaded some weeks ago. He said, look, this is how you win back power, or you attempt to win back power. And if you look at some of the people who are on the front bench, some of them are quite well known. And maybe this is part of Starmer's approach. Max, please, a moment celebration for Barbados, who today became a republic and no longer recognized royalty. Yay! I already said hello. Well done to Barbados for having removed their monarch without resorting to guillotines. So well done for them. Well done to them. And let's watch this space. I think there may be another few republics appearing on the horizon. I think Prince Charles was there yesterday, so that was interesting. Lisa Nandy said that she would look at how Spain dealt with Catalonia on Scottish independence. We want to send in riot police and beat up peaceful demonstrators. She won't garner any support in Scotland. Yeah, that was a really stupid thing that she said. I remember her saying that. I think I responded to it on a live stream or in a video. It was a really stupid thing to say. So, first of all, comparing Scotland and Catalonia. Catalonia is a region within Spain. Scotland is a country, so they're two different things. And, the idea that... Look at what happened in Catalonia. Its government was arrested and put in prison. And, it's actually illegal to declare this type of action in Spain. You will be arrested. I don't see that happening in Scotland, in the UK, not yet anyway. So it would be the case of the Scottish Independence Party, Scottish National Party, saying, okay, we're going to hold a referendum on independence, and Boris Johnson sending in the military to arrest Nicola Sturgeon. Not exactly the same thing, because Catalonia is different, but the optics are quite similar. That would be what, from an optical point of view. But once again, Scotland and Catalonia are completely different. Max, are you a Republican? I never thought to ask what that before. Not a big fan of the monarchy, yes. One of the reasons I'm not a big fan of the monarchy is if they're crap, you can't vote them out. Now, I don't know how people can be... I can understand how people like the Queen, they like the royal family from a sort of historical point of view, or a quaintness. I understand people like the quaintness about it. It's good for tourism, yes, but then also, Versailles is well visited, and there are no royals there. It's a popular destination, but you don't see any kings around. But yes, definitely I'm a Republican. The monarchies, a good monarch can be a good leader for the country. But you can also have a politician. You elect a politician to do that job as well. And once again, if the monarch is bad, you can't get rid of them. Well, you can, but you can't vote them out. And, recently heard, what was her name? Eileen Foster saying, we don't want to be part of a united arm because we'd lose our monarch. We don't want to lose that. We don't want to vote for our president. I was like, that's a benefit. You can't vote for your monarch. In the olden days, monarchs would be, in some societies they would be chosen from the best, but it's not the case today. I'm not saying that I'm against the people themselves. A lot of them, I think Queen Elizabeth, she was sort of forced into it. She had no choice. And I think she's done, if you think about it from a human point of view. It's a job, and it's a job you can't give up. So, imagine whatever job you're doing at the moment. Imagine if you were told, you have to do this job for the rest of your life. We'll give you great pay or whatever, but if you don't like the job, doesn't matter how much they pay you, you're like, no, I don't want to do this job anymore. No, you have to do it for the rest of your life. And when you die, your children are going to do the same job as you. It sounds horrible. What if my children don't like that? They have to do the job. Sorry. Yes, there are huge privileges that come with it, but, the Queen can't go on Twitter and tell Boris Johnson to go F himself or something like that. I can. She can't. So her life is... There are two personas, of course, for the Queen. There's Elizabeth Windsor, who's one individual, and there's the Queen. And, she can't separate herself from that. Maybe, when she's at home, there's no one around, she can separate herself from... She can, burp, lie on the sofa and burp after a few beers or something. But when she's the Queen, she can't do any of this. It's... If you think about it, apart from the privilege and the money and all of this, it's a pretty sad existence. Because you have no... In a sense... real freedoms is the idea that you can, most of us have. You get up in the morning, Sunday morning, Saturday morning, if you're not working, you can go down to the shop, you can go for a coffee, you can go for a run, walk the dog, things like this, and you're free to do that. The Queen can't do that. Prince Charles can't do that. Harry and Meghan can't do that. William and Kate can't do that. And in a sense, they can't enjoy the things that ordinary people can. And I can understand why Harry wanted to get away from that. Part of it probably, related to his mother. But I don't want to get into a discussion about the monarchy. But I think Harry was like, I don't want to be part of this crap. I want to be human. And I fully support him in doing that. And I really admired how he was giving a speech to, I think it was an environmental charity or something, and he requested to be called Harry, not Your Royal Highness. And I really admired that, because he said, look, I'm just a guy. Okay, treat me as just a guy. Call me Harry. Max, check out the time when she met Martin McGuinness. She said, Martin said to her, how are you? She said in return, I'm still alive, Martin. Martin's face was brutal. You haven't killed me yet. And, it'd be interesting to sit down, what did they talk about if they sat down? He probably felt quite more nervous than she did. Because part of the human side probably came out. He said, like, she's not that bad of a person. I disagree with her politically. I disagree with her constitutionally. I disagree with her position. But at the end of the day, she's just a human like all the rest of us. The monarchists think that they're chosen by God, or they have some sort of weird blood. But no, in reality, they're the same as everyone else. So Ron on the stream. Yeah, I'm getting too close to monarch acceptance here, but no, I don't agree with the job at all. You can't vote them out. If you can't vote them out, then what's the point in having them? It's like having Lord Frost. Who the hell weren't the Brexiteers supposed to get rid of unelected bureaucrats, and then they put in Lord Frost. So it goes on to say shadow cabinet ministers had recently complained about how much airtime Yates Streeting was getting. More low-key shadow ministers, including Kate Green at Education and Luke Pollard at the Environment, both of whom were viewed by colleagues as diligent and thoughtful, were unceremoniously ditched. Tellingly, one Starmer aide told Political newsletter a daily note for Westminster insiders that the reshuffle had put fresh, hungry, effective message carriers in key briefs. His team are ruthlessly pursuing the aim of winning over swing voters in a handful of key seats, many of them in the red wall, and want people in place who are reassuring to Labour, Conservative Labour switchers, not redundant of Corbyn. I think there's a real move here to winning, just winning. Not about winning with policies, not about winning with some sort of vision, but where we can win, convincing the people that we can win. And if you're a political cynic like myself, you see that may be a strategy that can win. I'm more of, you need to have a vision, you need to have a message. And I think what Starmer is doing here is he wants to convince people that he can be Prime Minister. If he can convince people that he can be Prime Minister, people will vote for him. Doesn't matter what the policies are. Boris Johnson has demonstrated that. But what was in Boris Johnson's manifesto? Get Brexit done. But people also voted for Boris Johnson because they, and I hate saying this, but they liked him. They thought that he was Sir Ron of Londonderry. Londonderry. People believed in Boris Johnson, believed he could be Prime Minister. I don't know how. I would love to know how these people tick, but that's what they saw. And maybe it will work. Convince the people you can. It's all about. It's a little bit smoke and mirrors here. It's about convincing people that you can do it. If you imagine you're interviewing two people for a job, and you don't know if these people can do the job. On their CV, they say they can do the job, but one of them is more confident than the other. Who are you going to hire? You're probably going to hire the more confident person, not maybe because their CV is better, or because it's not so much the CV, but it's the confidence that wins you over. Well, this person is confident, maybe they can do the job. It could work. It could result in the confidence was all a charade. It was a facade. It was actually just for show. But that's in politics. That's necessary. That's enough. If Starmer can convince people that he could be Prime Minister, then people would vote for him. That's the weird way how politics works. It goes on to say they believe they're succeeding for the first time in a long time in having leader voters. Having a leader voters can imagine as Prime Minister. They are delighted by the performance of Reeves, including recently a high positive profile in The Telegraph. The Telegraph. But I understand this. It's about, and unfortunately, and this is going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, I think Starmer wrote an article for The Sun. The Sun and the Labour Party. I don't know if he'll be forgiven for that. I doubt he'll be forgiven for that. But unfortunately, or fortunately for him, he may not need the people who will be angry about that. People believed in Mussolini, yes. Believed in Mussolini. Not sure why we all call him Boris, to be honest. Call him Johnson. You say Corbyn, good point. Who backs Johnson, though? Who put all those money behind him? Where are they? Where are they? The donors. Labour lost me when they complained about the Tories putting up corporation tax rates. Perhaps Starmer should remind himself of the name of the party he's destroying. I've been blocked. Disappointed. I'm not sure what that's about. It's not about winning with policies. It's about winning with image. It's about winning with rhetoric, narratives. And I think that's what the Labour Party have now discovered. Will it work for them? I don't know. It could come crashing down. But I think at the moment the Labour Party is so low. You know, in 2019 it was the worst result since the 1930s. The only way is up, really, or it could get even worse. But I think the party now is Keir Starmer's. And it makes sense for the supporters to get behind him. Whether you agree with him or not, you have to get behind him. Because what is the alternative? The alternative is Boris Johnson, the Tories. There's no other leader in the Labour Party. One long-term Labour insider remarked that both Yvette Cooper and Ed Miliband are more experienced politicians than Keir, suggesting that by moving Miliband sideways and bringing Cooper into the tent, he must now feel his own position is more secure. So for Starmer's team, the reshuffle was an assertion of his authority, which had been battered by a ham-fisted reshuffle back in May, and a signal of intent to voters, with the general election potentially just a couple of years away. For MPs on Labour's soft left, who had previously regarded Starmer as one of their own, the end result was a sense of gnawing disquiet about the continued drift to the right, however, and some warned that the relentless focus on target voters in the red wall, while understandably given the shape of the 2019 crushing defeat, risk alienating other groups Labour need if it is to ultimately succeed in forming the next government. And this is a real risk. What will happen is that the Labour Party will move to the right, or to the centre right. They're not going to become the Conservative Party, obviously, but if the further they move to the right, they will pick up certain voters at the expense of others. Now, there are two ways these other voters could go. They could either not turn up, or they could hold their nose and vote for the Labour Party. That's the gamble that Keir Starmer is playing at the moment. Okay, I just want to show you one final piece, just in regards to the House of Commons. Whoops. Listen to what the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, has to say to this.
Yet again, this government have shown they are incapable of protecting our communities, protecting our NHS and saving lives.
So stay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, can I also extend my best wishes to the Shadow Health Secretary and wish him a speedy recovery. I do have to say, Mr. Speaker, I do think the Honourable Lady has misjudged the tone of the House.
Misjudged the tone of the House. When Boris Johnson is screaming his head off, when Boris Johnson is lying in Parliament, that's okay. But when the opposition raise a valid point about the risk to people's lives, she's misrepresenting or misunderstanding the tone of the House. Yeah, really. Okay. Get Brexit done, anagram for being extorted. Really? I should have known that, but that's wonderful. Edgy number 1. Hey, thanks so much for that super chat. Mutes until it's all over. Good point. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream for tonight. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who came on tonight. Thank you for all of your support. Thanks for smashing the like button. I want to say thank you to everyone who sent a super chat. Greatly appreciated as always. Misjudged the tone of the house. She was supposed to be lying. Yes, well said, Yoni. Want to say thanks to all the moderators for doing a wonderful job as well. Thanks to everyone who came on. See you on Friday. But before we go, of course, we have our one for the road, our comedy moment before we finish tonight. Remember, anyone who is a patron, you have access to Discord, and I'll see you on the Discord chat after the stream tonight. So we'll enjoy this funny video.
Did you watch the match yesterday? Which match? Yeah, you're right. There's so much on at the moment, isn't there? Football, tennis, or are you more of a cricket man? No, I don't like any of them. Oh, because I don't like sport. Oh, really? Yes. What, just because I'm a man I should like sport? No, of course not. It's just... What? Watching a presumably even number of people trying to do things with a ball is somehow important, is it? Well, I mean, just because millions of idiots inexplicably care about what specific spherical object ends up in what particular hole or piece of netting doesn't mean that I have to. No, fair enough. I'm so sick of people assuming that I must love sport. No, I do not love sport. Look, it's fine. I just think you're missing out, you know, on the sense of community, the drama. If I wanted drama, I'd go to the theatre, thank you. At least then I'm dealing with relatable human emotions. Like, what's it like to want to kill your uncle and sleep with your mother? And how hard would I have to punch that child to stop it sniffing? And do I want an ice cream at the interval? Okay, no problem. I was just wondering. I don't like sport, okay? It's important for you to understand that. I've worked at this. It's part of my identity. Fine. Look, I don't think I'm better than you. You do a bit. I do a bit, yes. What can I say? I just think life's too short for such childish pursuits. We only have a few short rotations of the sun on this blue and green orb. We shouldn't waste them worrying about who's got more kicking points in the goal tally. So what did you do yesterday? Mostly looked at Instagram.
Mostly looked at Instagram. So guys, have a great week. I'll see you on Friday, same bat time, same bat channel. Have a great week. Take care, and for goodness sake, wear a mask and keep yourself safe. I'll see you soon. Good night, guys. Take care. Good night.